Hello, third graders. Welcome to our science lesson today on plants. We have been learning and discussing plant structures, or as we call them, the parts of a plant, and talking about what are their functions and how do they support it. Today, we're going to talk about flowers and fruit together. So grab your true and false questions and your reading. We're on page 70 in our reading, and we're in the section that says flowers for our questions. We're going to start off by answering those true and false before questions. Remember, this is just getting your brain thinking. You're going to take a guess, true or false, and then afterwards we'll determine if we know the correct answer. So number 1 says, a green bean is a kind of fruit. Is that true or false? Go ahead and mark down what do you think is the answer here. A green bean is a kind of fruit. The second statement says flowers turn into fruit after they are pollinated. True or false? So go ahead and put that down if you think it's true or false. Flowers turn into fruit after they are pollinated. And our last statement says pollen must move from one part of the plant to another before the plant can make seeds. True or false? Again, pollen must move from one part of the plant to another before the plant can make seeds. All right, so you now should have filled out your true and false before questions, and we're going to go ahead and start to read. So follow along in your book as we read and talk about flowers. A flower is a structure many plants use to reproduce or make more plants. Flowers make a powdery material called pollen. And we read about pollen, if you remember, when we did our bees discussion. In order to reproduce or make a new plant, pollen must move from one part of the flower into another part. So there's an answer to one of our questions. Sometimes pollen gets into the parts of the same plant, but most pollen travels from a flower on one plant to a flower on another plant. Soon after the flower is pollinated, meaning it got a new piece of pollen, the petals fall away and seeds develop inside part of the flower. So as pollen moves, again, when pollen goes onto a new plant, then we call it pollinated. It's gotten a new piece of pollen, and that's when the flower will die, but the seeds will grow inside. If you look here up close, here's a picture of the plants, and you can see that there's a bee here helping and a butterfly that's helping to move the pollen from these flowers to each other. And up close here, this is a close-up, so here's a bee, and on the bee, you can see all these little white specks. That is pollen. That's the powdery substance. So as the bee is getting the nectar, that liquid, it also is picking up the powdery pollen on its body. And then as it goes from plant to plant, pieces of that pollen fall off and he picks up new pollen. After the seeds, then we have another part we're going to talk about. So another part of the flower grows around the seeds to protect them. The part of the plant that grows around the seeds is called a fruit. So if you look at this picture here, there's tiny little apples that have started to grow right here. And that's because they're protecting the seed from this flowering plant. At the very top, you can see just the last little bit of those flower petals, and those will soon fall off. Apples, peaches, and oranges are all fruits that come from flowering plants. Believe it or not, green beans are a kind of fruit too. The beans have seeds inside, so they are a fruit. Tomatoes, cucumbers, and green peppers are all fruits also, because again, they have seeds inside. Berries and nuts are fruits too. So let's look here. Here is that picture of the apple plant kind of up close. So the seeds are growing inside here. The top is where those petals were, and they will soon fall off and an apple will grow around those seeds. All right. Sometimes we call these things vegetables. The sweet ones that we eat, we call fruits like apples. The other kinds of fruits that are not as sweet is what we usually call vegetables. And as we said, even nuts are fruit. Nuts have a hard shell with a seed inside. There are some fruits that we don't eat, but animals might be eating. And here are some more pictures of those fruits and vegetables, as we sometimes call them. Here are green beans, apple, a peach. Here's nuts, walnuts. Here's blueberries and cucumbers. And all of these are a fruit that have grown from a flowering plant around a seed. All right, so let's just kind of review all of our structures. So remember, we started by talking about roots and that there was the two kinds of roots. There was tap roots and fibrous roots, and that they are used at the to go under the ground most of the time. Sometimes they're above the ground, and they soak in the water and the nutrients to help the plant grow. They also anchor the plant so that it doesn't blow over. And then we talked about the stem, and the stem helps to transport or carry those water and nutrients to other parts of the plant and the food from the leaves to other parts of the plant as well. We talked about leaves and how leaves have chlorophyll, which makes them green, and the chloroplast, which are like solar panels and absorb the sun's energy. And in the leaves, they take in that sunlight, our carbon dioxide, remember that's the air we breathe out, and the water, and they turn it into sugar or food for the plant to grow. And after they've done that, they breathe out through those tiny holes the oxygen that we then breathe in. So the leaves help to make the food. And then finally, the flowers. The flowers help the plant to make a new plant by producing that pollen. Once a plant gets pollen from another plant, it's called pollination. And that's when the seed develops. And then around the seed is a fruit that grows to protect it. And any fruit has a seed, even though we call some of them vegetables because they're not as sweet, they still are considered a fruit because they grew around a seed. All right, next time we come together, we're going to talk about cones.